Hello and welcome to episode 23 of HardcoreGaming101.net's top 47,858 games of all time podcast, where we objectively, definitively, and scientifically rank the games you nominate on Twitter. My name is Xerxes, and we recorded this before we found out if the United States of America was still a thing. My panelists today are...
I'm Carl.
I'm Satanga.
And I'm Electric Viking, back to wreck this podcast once more.
On this podcast, we have three rules. Grail Ginthoff. All rankings are final, official, and scientifically accurate. Isle Reol. You can nominate games one at a time via Twitter by hitting me up at GCINext. And Trudid Reol. You can nominate games that have already been nominated. Just don't nominate games we've already ranked. If you want to see for yourself which games have been nominated, which games have been ranked, check it out. The master list is at bit.ly/47kgames. And remember, if you want us to fast track your nomination, do it as soon as we possibly can. Include it in a 5-star iTunes review, and I promise we will get to it on the quick fast. Next, we're going to be talking Metroid. It was nominated by @ColorJunkies, and that is color spelled the British way.
Champion. I am so into that.
Developed by Nintendo R&D 1, published by Nintendo for the Nintendo Entertainment System and for the Famicom Disk System. Its earliest release date was August 6th, 1986, and I believe that was in Japan for the FDS. Correct. Okay, so if you don't know what Metroid is, I don't know how you found this podcast, because it's one of those games that like everybody knows it at least because of Super Metroid. If nothing else, it is a
well. I mean, if nothing else, it literally has a genre named after it.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, the kids nowadays should be familiar with Other M, and I'll get this out of the way. While Metroid is certainly a hallowed hallmark of games from then, it's not as big as it used to be, unfortunately.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it was never as big as people ever thought it was. Like,
it's not Mario or Zelda. That's the thing.
Right. Yeah. There's this ridiculous like joke on the internet. It's like Metroid is like the third pillar of Nintendo's franchises, and I've always thought that was nonsense.
It is, because I can tell you, as a big Metroid fan in the day, like I was amazed that it even got a sequel, because nobody talked about it. It was a game that I feel like Nintendo might have been. Well, I mean, they would have the sales figures, like rough sales figures, but I think they also got a lot of calls into the hint line for this one.
Sure.
It's in fact, I know they did, because one of the disgruntled former Nintendo helpline guys like wrote a series of blog posts about 5 or 6 years ago, where he was talking about just like spilling, the dirt about what that job was like. And he said, like, when you started that job, like you had to master, I think he said Zelda, Metroid, and Deadly Towers, because he said those are the games you're going to be getting all your questions about.
Wow.
Well, remember when this game came out, right? So 1986, it was one of the first games that a lot of, non-Super Mario Brothers games that a lot of people played, just because it was out and it involved a space person shooting things.
Yeah, this was a time when Sierra's prominence on PC was growing exponentially, and while Metroid certainly is not an adventure game in the style of Sierra's graphic adventures, it was a console game that offered almost as much complexity as such games, but, in a different way, of course.
Well, I mean, this is one of the earliest, and especially one of the earliest outside of, within the genre, that is not a straightforward game. This is one of the first platformers that you actually will probably need hints for, like, straight up.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I would say Pitfall 2 probably beat it to the punch. I would be surprised if the people who made this game hadn't played Pitfall 2. Not that they necessarily set out to make a Pitfall 2 kind of game, but I know they would have played it, because Nintendo was not stupid, and they played, games from, for Atari and stuff like that. And
sure.
Even if you hate it, it's an original kind of game. There's nothing that could prepare you for this game. Even if you played Pitfall 2, it's leaps and bounds. It's just a totally different country. Playing this game at the time, as a kid who had this is like pre-Nintendo Power, I think. I think that like the only way, there was the official players
Metroid,
guide. I think that was the one thing you could...
Metroid was covered in that. I think it even had a almost full map of the game, too.
I mean, that would be one of the early episodes, presumably. Oh man, what the hell they call
it was pre Nintendo
magazine.
Power. It was post Nintendo Fun Club. It was the official Nintendo Entertainment System Player's Guide.
Oh my god!
It was like a black. Yeah, it was like a
it's-
black magazine type thing.
It's even a complete map. I'll be damned. Oh
But
wow!
to give you an idea of how weird this and disorienting this game was at the time, this is one of the few not launch era but close to launch era NES games that was still getting little blurbs in Nintendo Power well into the 90s because people were still asking questions about it. So like the Counselor's Corner and stuff, little sections of that magazine, like well into the 90s, were still talking about Metroid because they were tired of getting calls about this game. And it's the thing about the game is it's a nonlinear platformer. I mean, can we all agree that it's kind of brilliant the way the game at least starts out with it's got the morph ball is what we call it now. At the time, the manual called it the Marumari because I guess the English translator guy was sick that day. And
no, definitely the intro of the game is brilliant because it just says, okay, here's a platformer. Wait, no, rules are completely different. Forget everything you learned. Try again.
If for no other thing, like I think it is the smartest and absolute like easiest takeaway from this game was like, and it's maybe the most like Gunpei Yokoi thing that happens throughout is this immediate like mess with your expectations in this really obvious way.
Right.
Like it's not like it was some like incredible leap of technology to force you to go left, but that is like very in line with his thinking was like, I'm going to take this like pre-existing idea and abstract it just adjacent.
I feel like a lot of modern players would almost certainly go left in this game automatically because they're like, wait a second, I think I can go left because I don't want to progress yet. I want to check if there's anything behind me.
Yeah,
so
that's
I think
the influence this game had. It's not necessarily because everybody played this game. It's because everybody's played games that were inspired in part by this game. That's a great point. I mean, before not to dump all over the Gunpei Yokoi reference, but he probably didn't have as much to do with the game as he did picking the guy who created. I can't remember that guy's name. He's still at Nintendo because nobody ever leaves these companies in Japan.
I don't doubt that you're right either. I think.
But what he did was he hired not hired, but promoted an artist, a staff artist to the game design thing because he said if you could draw a picture. If you can draw a game, you can design a game, is what he said. And he's probably pretty hands off, although I do think that he kind of probably gave them some idea of what they should be doing with it because it was supposed to be a showcase for the Famicom disk system, which would allow saving.
I will say, if you can draw a game, you can design a game. That would actually really explain a lot about Metroid's layout because honestly, its layout's not great. It's like in a modern context, it is confusing.
It is confusing. The hints are there. So everybody probably who's listening to this has played or knows enough about Super Metroid. You've probably seen like 20 Super Metroid speedruns alone. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about the mechanics of this, although I do want to talk about how it's different than Super Metroid and what came after it. And that's a big one. So Super Metroid basically functions the same. It's almost like the same game in a lot of ways. It has more items and stuff to collect.
The super part of the Super Nintendo almost certainly was they basically redid Mario Brothers, they redid Zelda, and they redid Metroid. That's pretty much exactly what they did.
Yeah, got a second crack at it.
Yeah.
Metroid may have benefited the most out of all of those series, if only for the map that they included in the game.
It's got an auto map type feature, which is a big deal. But let's talk about, so imagine playing Super Metroid without a map. And on top of that, imagine playing Super Metroid without every room in Super Metroid is a little bit different and sometimes a lot different from the other rooms in the game. So even if you didn't have a map, you could probably find your way around in that game pretty easily just by using landmarks.
Yeah.
That doesn't really happen in the original Metroid.
The black backgrounds are a double-edged sword. Like, they save on space, and they also give a pretty gloomy atmosphere to the map, but it can be hard to really keep a sense of identity. All I know is that like Kraid's hideout is really gray and parts of Norfair are really purple. You have to go on the tiles for the floors and whatnot to kind of get an idea.
I mean, they do include like there's some sort of like shrubbery and some sort of like plants and outcrops and bubbles and stuff occasionally. They do try, and I'm not gonna. In terms of how I feel about this game, I'm not going to hold the fact that it's kind of dealing with 1986 technical limitations against it. Like, it's
very much.
They had to make calls in this.
So they wanted a big world. They wanted a world in which you could go backwards and forwards and revisit places and stuff like that.
That's mandatory.
They also wanted, but they wanted to make a game around that. They also wanted a game where you could scroll up at times and then go to another room and scroll left to right. So you could scroll up and down, left to right, depending on the room. You can't do both in the same room. There's no room that is, that's a big part of Super Metroid.
It's a limitation of the system.
Right.
It takes a hard time.
Right. So they also wanted it to be as big as they could make it. And one of the ways they did that was using some interesting... I wish I were more technically minded because I could explain it better. But basically, the game repeats a lot of stuff. You still see this even in PlayStation games. Like Vagrant Story does this, for instance.
It's a tile set. Like they're just taking the same like level chunks and repeating the same.
Right. It's like if you took an entire screen and duplicated it with like different enemy positions and stuff like that. But
definitely part of that, again, the technical limitations crop up again and again with this game. And because it is the Famicom disk system, it's not a cart. So this game, if you play it on the Famicom disk system, it loads. And it's clear that, if they had to chop it up with tiles, otherwise every time you change the room, it would be like, well, I got to load the whole room again. Good luck.
Right.
I think you can glitch the game badly enough through hidden walls or something that I think that Nintendo Power or something I read claimed that this was like a hidden room or something, but really it was just a mess.
It wasn't Nintendo Power. It was basically like a playground urban legend that there was a secret world in Metroid.
Yeah, I don't know how I heard that. I just remember it buzzing.
I don't remember how I first heard it either, but it wasn't through a magazine. It was definitely like a rumor. The fact is they made a game that had a lot of not necessarily repetitive rooms because there's enough differences in them that I can tell them apart, but that's because I played the game like countless times. They were aware of how repetitive the game was going to be in terms of like how similar rooms were going to look, and they designed the game around that as best they could. And the game really does feel like you are traveling deeper and deeper into like the bowels of space hell.
Are you trying to talk about theme or atmosphere?
Yes. Yeah. So like they not only worked with their limitations, they built upon those limitations. And the game, unlike Super Metroid, where every room looks different, this game is a game that is, especially to a kid, is kind of scary because you can get lost. And there's a real sense of, oh my God, I'm lost. What's going to happen? Like, how do I get out of here? I'm running out of health.
Because it has that, especially if you played this in 1986, this would be like, as I mentioned, like this is one of the first games where you can essentially get lost in, and that's freaky because the game world is extremely savage and raw. It's going to like mess you up. The enemies do a lot of damage, and if you get lost, you might stumble into an area where everyone does a huge amount of damage, and it's like, oh my God, what the hell? I'm scared. Yeah. And the music is like, ping.
Yeah, the music starts out. Yeah. So the music is by the early NES composer Hip Tanaka.
Love that guy.
Who did almost everything except for Super Mario Brothers and Zelda.
Everything that Koji Kondo didn't do, he did.
Right, Super Mario Brothers and Zelda. He did. Those are the two things Koji Kondo did. So he did like Gyromite, those badass tunes, and all that stuff. But everybody who made this game approached it knowing it was going to be different. It was going to be weird. That it was made with that intent. And Tanaka did the same thing with the music, where he said, okay, so I want a theme for the main area of the game. So there's like it's not an overworld. It's just a part of the same cavern system, but it's like the starting segment of the cavern system.
It becomes like the familiar sort of...
Right. That's the theme. It's got the heroic theme. And then when you move on to a different area, when you get into a secret area where there's like a weapon or item hidden, it's got this secret theme, and that is, which has almost very little tune. It's a very short tune, and isolate, like there's always footstep sounds in the game, by the way, which is kind of weird. It's like the first game I know of that has real-ish I know it's not the first, but it's the first game I ever played that had realistic sounding footsteps, as in like hitting the NES noise channel instead of doing like the Donkey Kong, like that kind of thing, squeaky sneaker sound. And so when you went through it, when the music dropped out a little bit, you would hear like the footsteps. And it was like isolating the player. And then when you got in deeper into the caverns, the music would get really dirge-like.
Yeah, the
I think
music.
It's the Kraid theme is the one that always sticks in my head.
Yeah, the Kraid one is rhythmically, hauntingly creepy, yet very catchy somehow. In contrast, the hideout music for Ridley is just like hell. It's a nightmare. It's very hostile sounding. But yeah, I don't know what you call that for the music. Not diegetic, something like that.
No, definitely not. It's more like that word. it's just atmospheric and evocative music, and it gets the deeper you get into the game, the less musical it sounds. So when you get to when you go to the underground, the first elevator you usually take, I think you have to take in the game because you have to get the high jump boots. And the game, more so than Super Metroid, by the way, it makes you go all over the place.
Right.
Like you're not just going into Super Metroid is broken down like world by world within the overall world, right? Where it doesn't really require you to go back to a previous area that you've already been to, or go ahead to an area that you feel like you're not supposed to be into to get something that you need. Super Metroid doesn't do that to you. And in my opinion, that is to the game's detriment, because this is a game that you feel like you're doing something you're not supposed to do, that you're going into a place that you're not ready for and you have to do it.
Yeah. It's like a lot more intimidating. I think it's a lot more to the spirit of what I'm one of those weirdos that is way less fond of Super Metroid than I am of Metroid, and I can sympathize with people who have a hard time going back to the original, and I would kind of encourage people to check out Zero Mission as a nice what would you call it, kind of a side grade.
Yeah,
because if it adds a map, which I think is really a nice touch, and it gives you these SNES style sprites and all that. So if you're really keen about that, let's have it too. And once you've beaten it, you can actually go back and play the original Metroid.
It also has a hard mode, I believe, which makes the game about as hard as the original Metroid is. And that's my main complaint about Super Metroid, is it's just a little bit. Actually, it's way too easy.
It's too easy and it's too damn short. Whereas like Metroid, part of the reason it got so damn long is you feel kind of lost occasionally. I think it
occasionally.
So
there's just something to that. Like it really, Metroid is on the list of games. Like I wish I could have gone back in time and experienced this thing when it came out, because I think some of the issues I have with Metroid would not be so glaring if I had grown up in that. Just like sitting down with a graph paper and mapping out Metroid by myself.
Yeah.
Now sounds totally insane. But 30 years ago, I could totally see myself doing it.
I mean, God, don't remind me.
One hard part about mapping to because I did try and map Metroid a little bit while I was playing, because I haven't played it much before. Because it's not kind of definably broken up into chunks, it's actually quite tricky to map, because you're not actually sure how big an area is, and you kind of can. If you look at the whole map, you'll notice that you'll actually probably accidentally draw over your map, and it'll become a huge mess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is annoying.
So, I mean, it's kind of like mapping Zork in a lot of ways. If you've ever tried to map a text adventure, you're like, well, this doesn't make physical sense, but I know that you have to just draw connections in a way between place to place. And then it's a
nodal map, basically. You're just drawing a network.
But the thing is, the game really requires, like, the if you want to call it this, the workflow for the game is you get the Marumari, which allows you to shrink, as everybody who's listening to this knows what this does, but rather than ducking, you shrink it to a ball and can go like through tight corridors and stuff like that way, which, first of all, is insane. That doesn't make any sense. And who thought of this?
Well, it's one of my favorite features that this game actually brings to the table is the morph ball, because like a lot of the other elements in the game are like, yeah, you can find those in other platformers, easy peasy. Right. But the morph ball is like,
everything in this game, yeah. So every weapon in the game is essential, unlike later Metroid games. And it's not like just there's one or two obstacles that you need this item to get around. Like you have to figure out how to do it. So you do that. Then you have to go to another part of the place, fumble around until you find the missiles, and then you can get the bombs. And once you get the bombs, the game does a pretty good job of hinting at what you should be doing with them. Because when you first get them, you're thinking this is a weapon that I can use when I'm in the ball. And then it forces you to go through some narrow passages with an enemy that moves in kind of a sine wave pattern. And so your instinct is, I'm going to go into a ball and try to bomb this sucker. And what you'll end up doing is bombing through the floor, and then you'll find the ice beam.
I didn't do that at all. I've never done that. I just run around like, I got no idea. This game, because I think those destroyable floor is not super obvious, because there is obvious destroyable floor. The Kraid hole is really obvious because there's like destructible bits.
Right.
I don't think that one is kind of telegraphed as much. It's like just kind of.
It's all there, and if you were forced to scrutinize the game because it's the only game you had.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, this is as I try to iterate. This is a 1986 game. If you played this then, you didn't, because like a lot of stuff that I'm going to approach this game, and anyone who's kind of coming from a modern perspective, they're going to come in and they're going to be like, I'm going to take all the baggage that I've developed over 30 years of games, and then this game's going to be like, well, throw it all out because I don't do that, and it's like, oh.
I should clarify that I've actually grew up playing both the original and Super Metroid, and I actually did like them both a good deal. But I can't really explain why I did like the original Metroid. I think it really was more for the mood and atmosphere than how it played. I mean, it is a different ballpark from Super.
This is a schoolyard game. This is a game where some little asshole Timmy says, "Hey, did you know you could bomb through the floor?" And you're like, "What?"
Yeah,
and then everyone knows.
That's the spirit of the original Game Club 1990X before it got horribly side railed by games that were impossible to beat. But like that is definitely something that kind of was something that happened.
I think
like Zelda had the same deal with bombable walls and stuff. Like this was something that it would spread amongst people that talked and played games at the time, and they would be like, "Oh yeah, did you know this?" It's like, "Oh, okay, that's how you solve that."
In addition to the nonlinear stuff, which the game does deserve some credit for that, I think it deserves even more credit in a way for the inventiveness of the weapons and items.
Definitely when a lot of other games would be like, oh, you want to progress? Have a key. And this game's like, well, you want to progress? You need to get a gun that freezes enemies so you can jump on enemies and then turn it to a ball and roll through the floor.
If you want it, you got to get the freeze beam first, and you got to figure out, you can touch these things, you can stand on them. And it's got the screw attack, which is probably the most useful weapon in the game because it allows you to move through rooms without getting totally stomped by everything.
The concept of like multi-purpose weaponry, it almost would have begun for platformers here because I don't think that many others felt like doing that for the most part.
It's end game when you go to fight the Mother Brain, which is the creepiest boss and boss layer in the NES library, in my opinion. At that point, the music just degenerates into nothing but like bubbling and gurgling. It's not, in like a low bass tone that just moves up and down. It's not even music at that point. It is like you have reached the devil itself.
It should also be said about this game specifically, compared to Super Metroid, and I think every other sequel it's had, part of the reason you're so goddamn scared most of the time is the consequences for dying in this game are particularly friggin' harsh because they don't even start you with full health.
No, I mean it's.
I definitely disliked that. I mean, I know it's like ooh, but it really is just tedious. Because when you die, you go down to 30 health, and I don't know what like the maximum perceivable health is in this game, but it's several energy bars, so it's several hundred, right?
It can only get a maximum of I think 5 energy per energy sphere, right?
It's weird. Like, I think if you use missiles on some enemies, they drop 20 blocks. I think is how it works.
Really?
It's a little. Yeah,
That's something I didn't know. Yeah, that's interesting.
I was picking up. Maybe it's just the FDS version.
The FDS version. Yeah, the FDS version does have a few peculiarities that aren't in the NES one, and that might be one of them. That's why I never noticed it. I mean, I played this entire game without realizing you could force it to give you a password on the American version.
I wanted to say something mean, actually, if I may. Some of your praise kind of reminded me of when Homer Simpson was trying to sell his kids on Grand Funk Railroad. Look, I really do like the original Metroid, but it has to be said that not everyone is going to get into it just because of how technical and all these nuances that's really hard to pick up on. I mean, you know, Cal just playing it really intensely for the first time lately, he had lots of problems with it, which I really do think need to be addressed. Like, you could call them problems or stylistic choices, but
no, some of them are just problems. But I think they might be related to technical limitations more than design choices, and I think that's what we were trying to talk about. But yeah, it's a huge problem to start out with 30 energy out of, like, you know, several hundred that you'll need.
Like, because the only way to get, you kind of need energy, so you have to grind energy off enemies, which is kind of like that's a design
choice. I think that part is where they've got the enemies that come out of the tubes and you have to destroy them, and then you collect the energy.
That's clearly, I think, more of a stopgap. Like, they're like, all right, well, if we're going to give the player no energy, we have to be able to give them energy, so let's do this weird, like, pipe enemy thing.
Let's have them balloon fight for a little while, basically.
Right. Yeah, I hate it too.
But I am willing to segue into ranking this game. So
I'm going to start it out. I would put it. I mean, I know nobody's going to agree with me. I would put it at number 2, right under Super Mario 64.
No.
Okay.
No.
So where would you guys put it?
Wrong.
No. I mean, that's where you want to put it. It's your like freaking favorite NES game. I'm not gonna like.
Okay,
that's where you want to put it.
Xerxes, I'm worried your decision might be a little checkered by the nostalgia filter.
It doesn't matter.
Fine.
I hear what your decision is. I'm just
like
mine starting.
We got to negotiate him to a different spot if we can, which I think we can quite readily. Like, the thing about Metroid is that it is an extremely, like, it is a very important game. There's no denying that. But everything about this game's technical limitations are things that would be solved, like, repeatedly. You know, obviously Super Metroid solves a lot of the problems, but maybe it's not a perfect dragging on Metroid. But so many, like, modern indie games, the genre is very popular, and a lot of them do. Like, they're like, okay, well, here's Metroid, but it's, like, actually kind of got all the niceties that you want. I really love the atmosphere in Metroid, and I seriously will try and finish it at some point, because I think, like, it's got great atmosphere. I like the fact that the enemies are genuinely threatening. Because, you know, like, if you boot up, like, Castlevania, Symphony of the Night or whatever, all the enemies are just like, you just hit him and then you get, like, stuff. And it's like, well, that's not interesting. They're not dangerous. Unfortunately, I got to kind of drag it into the Ranger X zone is approximately where I would personally put. I'm not quite sure exactly the number, but I feel it's kind of in the, the strong but flawed area is where I would put it.
Yeah, so to give people an idea of where Ranger X is as we're recording it, because it will always change, it is currently ranked, I think, at number 33?
33.
Or around that range. It's underneath Contra the Hardcore, and right above Ikaruga. Who agrees with that or disagrees with that?
I disagree.
Satenga, let's hear what Satenga says before you, because I think you're more on my side than Satenga will be.
Yeah.
And I want to get the negative opinion out first.
Right. I feel I have been a little harsh on this game all throughout this. Its atmosphere really is tops. On the NES, and not even many other games I can think of, regardless of the system, really get the atmosphere as well as it does. But it's kind of Byzantine to play. It even sort of was back then, and just by modern perspectives, it's...
Right.
I have to admit, I'm sorry, Cal, but even despite my negativity, I still think Ranger X is lowballing it a little.
You don't have to apologize to me for having a difference of opinion on this one. I've got very little stake in the NES.
My thought is between Mega Man 3 and Super Mario Land? If I wanted to click it up a bit.
Getting better. All right, let's hear
from Brood here, the Viking.
I care for this game more than I care for Kicks. and I might care for it more than I care for Final Fantasy VII, and I like Final Fantasy VII quite a bit. I don't think this game goes below Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island for goddamn sure. Yeah, I would stick it right between Drill Dozer and Final Fantasy VII. Excepting for everything that has been said, I think it is a game that has not aged particularly well at all. I would say maybe it's been ravaged by time more than any of the like really top tier first party NES stuff. But True. God, it's a hell of a game. And if you can get your head into that space, or if you're someone like Xerxes who experienced it at the time, oh, I envy you. Because it's actually special. I think it's a special game. I think it's way more special than Super Metroid.
Well, I can't say I am going to riot if Super Metroid ranks lower, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
So yeah, so I mean, it's really hard for me to be objective about this, as I'm sure you imagine, but I'm doing my damnedest. This game is probably the reason why I'm doing this podcast.
You're going to drop that bomb on us, God?
No, I'm not. It's not a bomb. Like I will say that this game, even at the time, based on playing Legend of Zelda, which is the only thing we had to compare it to in those days, it is obtuse. It is difficult in a way that Legend of Zelda just wasn't. Legend of Zelda was forgiving in a way. But let me say this. Legend of Zelda's weapons and other stuff, all the stuff that it added, the stuff you collected, it's nothing you wouldn't... It's a logical construction upon the foundation of Atari's adventure. It's all stuff that you would expect to be there. It's not out of the ordinary. There's the magic wand, which starts fires, is probably the coolest thing you can do. There's the boomerang, but that functions just like a boomerang, and it kind of brings stuff back to you, and that's cool. Did you say the
boomerang functions just like the boomerang?
No, the boomerang functions just like a boomerang in that you fire, you shoot it, and it comes back to you, right? Sorry, yes. Australia police. Jeez.
Well, they don't come back to you. It's a very hard technique to get down.
But the thing is, like everything in Metroid is crazy, weird, nuts. Mm-hmm. The weapons all do stuff that is not obvious, and
Metroid is definitely a forward-thinking game in terms of what it ends up doing, but it does cripple itself by, and I'd almost say even if we say technical limitations, it's when it comes in and says, well, here's an overwhelmingly strong punishment for trying to play the game. It's like, oh. Okay, that's kind of crap.
Like Xerxes, I am really sorry, but we've got to put a stamp on this. Here, my final offer is between Faster Than Light and Where the World's Carmen Sandiego.
I do think it needs to be pushed down just a little bit more to.
Okay, how about this? I'll agree between Drill Dozer and Final Fantasy VII, and we're making a coin flip.
I mean, are you going to say that, well, this game that is like an interesting, good-ish game, but with problems, is really like better than like Alien Soldier, which is like almost the perfect run and gun.
Yeah.
Like, so cool. You guys just want to be like, it's better than that.
It's like, a better game. None of these games are bad, is the thing.
Right.
Like, everything above a certain line on this list is brilliant.
I mean,
like,
I'm just saying, like, is that you're definitely like, well, this game is so much better because it,
pretty much.
If
there are certain things that once it's been done, anybody can do it, but only after it's been done.
Like the tree that Metroid planted will produce like a third of this list in some way by the end of it. Like, you
I can see where you're coming from there. All right, you know what? Let's just flip the coin. Heads, it wins between Drill Dozer and Final Fantasy VII. Tails, it's between FTL and Carmen Sandiego. Okay?
Well, no, that's too much. Like, too far division. The difference between Metroid and Final Fantasy VII, if we're up at that level, I would definitely say that Metroid is a superior title to Final Fantasy VII because Final Fantasy VII doesn't bring anything new. It just adds graphics. It is almost the Super Metroid of the RPGs in a way, in the JRPG sense. I would consent that one fine. Like, it's above Final Fantasy VII on a specific level. I just want to say that it's getting pushed very high, and it's an important game, but I don't know how many people are going to actually enjoy this game if they play it.
Okay, it has great...
There's a game for them, and it's called Metroid Zero Mission. And they can get a rough, modern approximation of most of the feelings that you've got when you played this game originally. And to cover the rest of that ground, I'd recommend everyone go to the YouTube channel Luminist. That's Luminast. This is an artist who's been doing some analog synth remakes of tracks off of the Metroid soundtrack. And just pop those on, and there's some game footage that's playing as those are playing, and you'll feel something. There's something special to this game that I think easily earns it place this high on the list.
Let's flip a coin. If me and Jeff win, then there's no discussion. It's over. If you guys win, then you guys have to work it out where it goes.
Oh. Okay, that sounds fair, actually. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I'll flip it because I'm not caring.
The closest thing to impartial.
Okay. It's heads.
Okay.
Yay!
Well, the fates have spoken. I'm not going to argue anymore. Let's just end this, for God's sake.
Relax, man. It's Metroid. It deserves everything that it deserves.
It does. I don't want to be disrespectful. I just get stressed out when we really pontificate like this.
Could also play Axiom Verge. It's another good option.
Love that game.
Yes.
Yeah. Everyone check that one.
I floated that I wasn't enjoying like Metroid on Twitter, and I was told basically like play Axiom Verge. Like that's what I was told.
It's
so
a suggestion, yeah.
Shout out to Axiom Verge because it must be pretty good.
I'll just punch one more time. Metroid Zero Mission is absolutely worth checking out, and I think it's also, the last R&D 1 game ever.
Okay, our next game is Metroid 2. Return of... Oh.
Boo.
No, okay.
Son of a...
Our next game is Golden Axe, which was nominated by @Jacko_Morin. It was developed by Sega AM1. It was published by Sega. It published by Sega on the arcade for the arcades and for Sega Genesis, and there are many, many ports.
Master System port.
It's one of those...
bad of this game.
It was one of those like
most of the
Commodore
ports are
Amstrad.
garbage to be kind of up and up. It was this is the kind of game where it's like here's the lead platform, it's pretty good. Here's all the other platforms, don't buy it.
Woof.
The rest of it's a real garbage dump.
I just because like obviously all these British ports to like home computers were like, oh, we love beat 'em ups, let's port it, and it's like just absolute garbage when they do. It's so
we're talking about the good one.
I played the Mega Drive one. I think that was the nominated one. Was the Mega Drive one?
It was.
Okay. I was going to ask.
It doesn't make a huge difference. It's only like some minor differences other than the Mega Drive one has an extra level. I mean, that sounds like a huge difference, but the last level is good, but it's not like mandatory or anything.
Yeah, I mean, and it's got the 2-player mode, the duel.
Right, yes, the mode that you would boot up when you had a friend over, and it's like, hey, let's play this other mode, and it's like, wow, this is trash, and then you never played it again.
The main game, which is also 2-player. Yeah, you're right.
Yes, exactly.
Its earliest release date is December 22nd, 1989 in North America. Is that correct?
That's what I found. Japan's release date was literally 1 day later, from what I'm seeing, so...
But they're 1 day earlier
than the arcade version.
So, So that means it was probably released simultaneously.
Possibly.
Because they're across the international date line. So if you're talking about real time here.
I'm sure they did test locations in Japan for the arcade game before.
It's probably like they're two guys, like 2 keys on a submarine to launch the missile. And it's like, we're going to launch Golden Axe on the unsuspecting Mega Drive.
Yeah, it only released on Europe like a week later, too. So...
Yeah, so it's a port of the coin-op, which is also pretty good. But this one is a little bit extra. And the main thing that it adds, in addition to the duel thing, is, as he said, the extra level, plus the extra enemy, which means one more dude in a, executioner's mask and a loincloth, I think, but he's got purple skin or pink skin. Or
green,
what?
Actually.
Yeah.
But I think he's wearing purple armor, so he's like, I call that troll colors in fighting game parlance. It's weird, whatever the case.
Yeah,
It's a beat 'em up, and it's basically Conan the Barbarian, the beat 'em up. That's
right.
It's
It's great. You've got three characters. You've got Conan the Barbarian. I mean, Axe Battler. Axe equals Battler.
Who uses a sword, despite...
If I remember correctly, yes, he battles axes. He's trying to kill the axe guy.
He hates axes, except for the axe carried by Gilius Thunderhead, the dwarf. Who
Let me tell you about Gilius Thunderhead. Am I right? Like, damn, what a lost name.
Yeah.
He must be... There's a pervert joke somewhere in there, but I'm not going to try.
Let's just keep this pretty clean.
Yeah.
Speaking of clean, you have the third character, Tyrus Flare, and she doesn't wear anything, basically.
Yeah,
an
pretty
interesting
skimpy.
character because she gets more clothes on as the games progress. Like Golden Axe, she's just wearing like a bikini. Golden Axe 2, she's wearing like extra loincloth and drapings. She's almost got a full outfit in 3, and I think by Beast Rider she's wearing like, I don't know, a dress. Who knows?
So, I mean, the important thing is that the parts of her body that stick out the most are covered with metal. So it just kind of deflects the blows.
It might be metal, definitely.
I guess we don't know. It's true. So anyway, like it does the standard beat 'em up thing where if there's any difference at all between the characters, it's very simple. And so Axe Battler is medium attack power, medium magic power, and the dwarf is maximum attack power, less magic power, and Tyrus Flare is maximum magic power, minimum attack power.
I think she's faster. The characters have a slight speed difference, I think, in places.
Yeah, especially with their like reverse move, which is crucial to high level play, unless you're going for score, which is actually a whole other thing. So the interesting thing about the game is that in addition to the setting, which is very Conan the Barbarian, it's very Conan the Barbarian. In addition to that, it's got this magic thing, which you get little like blue pots that you get from kicking like squirrel men or whatever they are.
I think they're called thieves officially, but they're like little elves or kind of
really
gnomes.
Yeah, I think you'd almost call them gnomes, I think, is what they'd be close to.
Or hobbits. I think they're this game's version of hobbits, maybe.
Yeah, these guys show up and you just beat the shit out of them. Like that's all. They're just running around. You're like, get that guy, and you just it's fun. They're the game doesn't have it doesn't have crates that you break. You don't break open crates and get street chicken.
No, unfortunately, there's no health power-ups in the game at all, I believe.
Well, there is, but you've got to beat up the green versions of the little guy.
Yeah, the green munchkin.
And don't they ever only appear in the in-between campfire bits?
I think they appear a couple of times in the later levels.
They'll run out during like the later levels occasionally.
So,
okay.
It's a very stylized beat 'em up for 1989.
Yeah, I should clarify the original arcade release was May 1989. Specifically, December was the Genesis port. So that means the original Golden Axe actually predates Final Fight by roughly 6 months.
Right.
Yes,
oh, yeah.
I mean, this game was definitely, and you can tell this game definitely came out before Final Fight. It had and even if it didn't, it was definitely in development before Final Fight came out because it doesn't feel like a Final Fight type beat 'em up. It doesn't seem like they looked at Final Fight and because every game after Final Fight, as we were talking about on the Final Fight ranking, every game after Final Fight kind of felt a bit like Final Fight. Like they looked at Final Fight. That's the template. We go with that. Whereas this game has like this weird, like chunky sort of sloppiness to the way it plays. Like instead of doing like your sort of the combos are really strange and really fun to look at. When you hit an enemy, instead of just hitting them a couple of times, you start like pummeling at them with like a pummel of your sword.
The dwarf, he does like
gut basically. Like it's pretty savage looking.
Yeah, the dwarf does like 2 axe thrusts and then uses the handle or the pommel of the axe to like bash in their skull twice, and it makes like
awesome.
like a knocking on like wood sound.
Yeah,
and
this game
and then
has
he kicks him away,
even on the Mega Drive.
It's got cool sound effects that are taken, I think, directly from Conan the Barbarian and maybe a couple other sources.
Yeah, when in the arcade games, when they scream and stuff, it's ripped from movies.
Yeah,
I think they digitized the same ones for the Genesis one.
They cut out a couple, I think is what happened.
both,
Genesis one has less samples.
both Conan the Barbarian and First Blood have actually been taken from. So that one guy screams, "Oh God!" That's actually a young David Caruso, if you can believe it.
Oh, wow. So it's got the magic system, and the more little blue pots you get, the more it fills up your magic meter. And like I said, like the Tyrus Flare
The system
has
is actually kind of weird because like
it's like a weird tiered system.
right.
Yeah, like the dwarf's tier is very abrupt, but it means that he gets like level 3 magic very quickly, whereas Tyrus's is huge. You have to collect like 5 pots to get to level 2, but then after that, it's 1 pot to get to each next level to a maximum of 6, I think.
It works very well when you're working with another player simultaneously.
This game definitely feels like they were a little bit leaning towards making you play 2-player. Like, go grab a friend because it's going to be like that'll make your arcade or Genesis experience much better.
Yeah, it is beatable solo on the Genesis, but it is very hard.
Yeah.
The way I always beat it when I was a kid was to play one person as Tyrus Flare to save up their magic for bosses, the other person being the dwarf to do all the dirty work in between.
Tyrus and Gilius are, I'd say, one or the other is definitely preferable. If you're playing Axe Battler, you're doing it wrong. I'm sorry.
There's no point in going for the middle ground in this game, basically. Either just go all magic or all like dwarf thug beat 'em up, basically.
Playing solo, you got to be the dwarf, yeah.
Yeah.
Because what I like is when they looked at with the Master System port, they're like, wow, we have 3 characters, but we can only put 1 in. We got to pick one. What do we do? Let's put an Axe Battler.
Yeah.
What was the executive decision behind that? Wow.
Everyone wants to play Axe Battler. Oh, he's great.
The executive decision was, it's time to go to a hostess bar.
Yeah.
I mean, Cody was the boring middle ground in Final Fight. They had to make him a damn prisoner to make him more interesting. So.
Well, Cody had the pick sticker thing. When you picked up a knife, you could...
that was rad.
So, anyway,
I
let's get back to the thing. So
I love the characters' like backgrounds in this game because it's like I think Axe Battler's like Death Adder killed my father or brother or something, and then Gilius is like he killed my cousin, and Tyrus like he killed my whole family. Like that's the backstory for all the characters.
Tyrus totally downs all of them. Holy crap!
He also stole my clothes.
I wonder just how much evil that Death Equals Adder has been doing before he specifically pissed off these 3 heroes. Like, only now we're doing it because of revenge, not because you're good people. I don't know.
Well, that's the Conan Barbarian style. Everyone is out for themselves.
Right.
But then someone messes with you and yours. That's it. You get your sword and you kill him.
Let's talk really quickly about some of the cool things this game does. Why you would play it today.
The magic system is definitely like.
But we've covered that. So,
it's like a full screen clearing like bomb, which this is like really impressive stuff. That was like,
when you've got Tyrus's maximum magic thing is literally a giant dragon head comes down from the sky and just blasts the screen with fire.
It's metal. It's awesome.
It is so cool. It's like, it is. It is better than anything that happened in any of the Lord of the Rings movies.
I agree.
Cool. And I like those movies, but this is way cool.
When I played this game, and I played this game when I was quite young, you'd almost boot up this game and be like, I gotta show you this. Like, I gotta show you like Tyrus's like max tier magic because it's so cool. You gotta see it. Like, it's that level of cool when this thing was new.
The sound is so satisfying. We're just gonna have to cut the sound in. But the game also has this cool backwards attack thing where if you mash the two of the buttons at the same time, you do like a backwards attack that's extra powerful.
Yeah, because this game is pre-Final Fight again, so it doesn't do a desperation move. You don't have that in this game.
It's your main solution for when you're getting mobbed, which is clutch if you're trying to get through this game on your own, that back attack.
You have to do it. You have to. You won't survive if you don't. It also has some cool level ideas or some cool environment ideas where one of the...
before that, did anyone mention that we have dash attacks also? That wasn't common in beat'em ups either.
Yeah.
That's true. Yes, that's key.
You can run.
Yeah.
Flare had that cool, dive kick, right?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. And then like Gilius headbutts him with his horned helmet.
Yeah.
An axe battle is something. Who cares?
Yeah. It's also got like this weird floaty jump attack thing where it's just like a regular attack, but your jumps, like you jump up at a normal speed for a game, and then you kind of float down in a weird way.
It's supposed to be like a really cool dramatic like finishing stab where you like thrust down in like this like dramatic fashion, but
I wonder
all the enemies will dodge it, so it's like, oh good, I can't hit
well,
them.
they do and they don't.
I don't think I learned about that technique until I saw it in Game Center CX.
It's kind of too risky to use,
yeah.
But it does the most damage in the game. Like it absolutely destroys things.
Also got some cool environments. In addition to like the standard village and forest and castle levels, it's also got the Fiend's Path, which takes place on the back of a giant eagle that's been like shaved down the middle, like a reverse mohawk.
You ride on both the giant eagle and turtle in the game.
And there's a turtle village, yes, which is cool. And also in between levels, it gives you this like D&D style map with this cool music, and it draws on the map like to show you like. And next we went. The people who made this game were D&D nerds. I guarantee it.
It's definitely one that really pushed the theme, and as we said, it's Conan the Barbarian. Like every part of this just oozes the theme, including the music, which in either version is fantastic.
It's got
it sounds kind of muddy on the Genesis, but it's like you could tell what they were like. The compositions are decent.
The muddiness, I think, sometimes I think it helps it because it gives it this incredible grit. But that's true of a lot of Mega Drive sounds.
It really is.
It's really up to you whether you prefer the crispness of like a synth or you prefer like the Genesis super muddy.
Like, and I'm partial to the Genesis sound. Like it's just I think it's specifically like got a very early Mega Drive kind of muddiness to the music.
It really does sound and feel like one of those games that would never have been on anything Nintendo. So
yeah.
Also, just one more thing I want to mention. Nobody mentioned the chicken and the dragons that you ride. Also, because that's a
you get to ride on crazy animals.
Yeah.
They're called
basically just
weedians
get you
sometimes.
killed.
Like that's how bizarre it is. They hit enemies with their tongue. Bleh, bleh. Except I don't think that's in this one. I think that's in the second one. In this one,
it's got the little weird things that slap things with their tail, and it's got the dragons with the fireballs that just go like the tiny fireballs that are worthless and you're just going to die. And then there's the dragon that just spews fire at the ground with a huge stream that's actually useful.
Considering that this was released at a time when like other games were like, well, you get a lead pipe. Wow. And this game's like, you get a whole dragon that shoots fire. Like
multiple dragons. And the bosses are cool. They're huge. They're really big and they laugh at you.
Yeah, they stand there, they wait, like they're like, ha, they're so like, they're like, I literally don't care. They just wait for you to fight them.
We've got so much to gush about with Golden Axe, but how do we actually rank it in spite of all of our praise?
I love this game, but
the hidden secret sauce here is Golden Axe is kind of fun and it's a quaint beat 'em up game, but it's so outstripped by its own sequels. It's outstripped by Final Fight. I'm looking somewhere about smack dab in the middle of our list, maybe slightly lower. Like I'm putting it in the same territory as something like Tapper.
Yeah, I can see that. I would note that.
Like, it's a very butt rock feeling game, and I think I said the same thing about Last Battle, but no, this has got, like, quality butt rock to it, but it's still Scorpion.
Last Battle.
It's like the difference between, like, AC/DC and Rat.
Yeah.
Two T's.
It's a comfort food.
This is very much in the AC/DC, like the Brian Jones.
No, Bon
Brian
Scott.
Johnson.
Bon Scott.
Brian. No. That's too good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay. I got
Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson.
Is this game? It doesn't take a lot of skin off to play this game. It's fun. It's loud. It's like it was great when it came out, but it's really it doesn't matter. It's neither here nor there. It's like this is fun. You can play it for 30 minutes or whatever, and then you don't ever have to look at it again.
I will say that the giant bald guys in the furry Speedos with the hammers are very Dogsbauer-esque characters.
Bad Brothers, they're called.
The Bad Brothers, right, yeah.
I also love the translation when you rescue the king and queen in the Mega Drive version, where they're just like, I just saw him going into this room, and then it's like, oh, okay.
I guess it's a castle, you dimwit. It's like, what do you think? That's what it's for.
But what, I will say, because this is actually something that's kind of cool, the port of the game adds a level, and I think that that's really clever if you look at it from the perspective of you would have played this game in the arcade and you possibly finished it, and then if you boot up the Mega Drive version after that, you would be like, yeah, I beat Death Adder, the game's over, and then it would be like, no, a twist. Actually, you get a whole extra level. That was pretty cool. Like that was.
The game also has an easy setting where if you play it, it ends halfway through, and you fight the last boss as Death Adder Jr.
Oh, wow, that's how you reach him. I don't think I ever actually played that.
It's a clever way to sort of tell the player actually
next
play
time, try on harder difficulty settings.
Yeah, that was a thing every game back in the day.
I mean, to be fair, this game does let you crank up the lives, as a lot of games did. I think you can take your lives from 5. Is it your continues? One or the other. You can crank up the amount of stuff that you get.
So I'm for putting this. I would put it above UN Squadron, below Quirk.
I'm not going to fight against, I think that, I love this game. I do. I think it's also, personally, I think it's the best, possibly the best Golden Axe, because I think that the theme in this game shines through the strongest, even if the other games might be slightly technically better.
I can't objectively rate it. I do
like Revenge of Death Adder better, to be sure, but no, for a game for its time, it is quite quality. It might be a little outdone by its
this is definitely one of the strongest early releases on the Mega Drive. Definitely one of the stronger.
Sure, but I mean, Tanga specifically, do you really want to put this above Street Fighter 3?
You're appealing to me specifically on this.
I am appealing to you specifically.
He's a bastard.
Yeah, that's kind of a sneaky tactic, I hate to say.
Don't call attention to the arbitrariness of our whole conceit here.
I mean, I would honestly, I would move it down a peg. But not much fun.
Okay. So put it below Street Fighter Third Strike, above Bangai-O. Wow, Bangai-O is low. I forgot that.
I would put it directly below Outrun 2006 is where I would be happy with.
Okay, it's definitely in this area.
Below Bangai-O, above Devil's Crush. Final offer.
Okay. I'm going below Bangai-O. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I like it too. I like it. Yeah, let's go for it. Sure.
Okay.
Great. Done.
Oh, I should mention, the Death Adder theme is so brilliant. I love the Death Adder theme. It's one of the best themes a character has in a game ever. It's one of the most haunting tracks around. It's superb. Go listen to it.
That's all for this episode of Hardcore Gaming 101's Top Games podcast. Special thanks goes out to @ColorJunkies and @JackO'Moran on Twitter for nominating those games. And thanks as well to those of you we haven't gotten to yet. I promise you're on a big list, and we are making our way down that list. We will be getting to you soon. Thanks to my lovely co-hosts and compatriots. Thanks to our editor, Jeff Rude. Oh my God, I probably did that again last show, didn't I?
You did.
Yeah. I did. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Jeff Rude. Thanks to our theme song composer, Mateki. And of course, thanks to the support and feedback of listeners like you. You can support this podcast by making a small monthly donation at patreon.com/HG101. You can also help us by subscribing to HG101's YouTube channel and by following @GC9X and @HG_101 on Twitter. But most importantly, help us claw our way into the podcasting firmament by getting on iTunes, subscribing to HG101, and giving us a 5-star review. Remember, if you include a game in that review, we will fast-track that one. Do it, or you'll be thrown into a series of dark caverns with no map subscreen and 2 possible ice beams. Until next week, keep keeping it real.